Hello and welcome. Tonight, President Bola Tinubu, in his first media chat since assuming office, calls for a more coordinated approach to giving out palliatives to avoid tragic incidents as witnessed in some parts of the country. As the nation continues to wage war against insurgency and other sundry crimes, federal government says no fewer than 1,703 terrorism suspects have been prosecuted in the last 7 years. We kickstart our sectoral review of the year 2024, starting tonight with the performance of the economy. And a final draft of the U.S. House Ethics Committee's report into Matt Gaetz, obtained by U.S. media, finds evidence he paid for sex with a 17-year-old girl and used illicit drugs while in office.
And on business news tonight, Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria, IPMAN, begins sale of petrol at 935 naira per litre.
On sports, Arsenal manager Mikel Arteta confirms Bukayo Saka will be sidelined for many weeks after suffering a hamstring injury. The Gunners' 5-1 win at Crystal Palace.
And from Abuja, Nigeria Center for Disease Control (NCDC) raises alarm over the increasing rate of infections and death from Lassa fever in the last 4 weeks.
President Bola Tinubu says individuals and corporate organizations must devise a better way of giving out palliatives to the less privileged in society to avoid tragic incidents that characterize such distributions in recent times. Now, the president made the remark today in Lagos during his first media chat since assuming office, where he sat down with a group of journalists, including Channels Television's Malkwe Ogun Yusuf, to address a wide range of subjects affecting the polity. According to the president, charitable events are not peculiar to developing countries, but the difference with what obtains in developed countries is the process of giving out the palliatives. The president was speaking against the background of the recent stampedes recorded during the distribution of food items in different parts of the country, which led to the loss of over 60 persons.
It is very sad that people are not well organized. We just have to be more disciplined in our society. Okay. Condolences to those who lost the family members. But it is good to give. Every society, even in America, they have food banks. They have hungry people. In Britain, they have food bank. They have warehouses. They are organized. They take tokens to be in line and take turns to collect. It's unfortunate. We just have to. It's a reflection in our bus stops where we don't even want to be on queue before we rush into the vehicle. It is very sad, but we continue to learn from our mistakes. To me, I see this as a very grave error on the part of the organizers. But things are improving. It doesn't kill our happiness for this season. It should be. We should just get on with it.
Meanwhile, the president says he has no regrets removing fuel subsidy in spite of the attendant effect on the cost of living of the citizens. Reacting to a question by Malkwe Ogun Yusuf, the president says leaving the subsidy could have been tantamount to postponing the evil day as the country was running out of revenue to sustain the subsidy regime.
I don't want to question people with 5 limousine type of vehicles on the roads. Well, we should teach management with all our programs. We have to manage our resources within our means. There's no way out that you give out fuel and allow all the entire neighboring countries as Father Christmas. I don't have any regret whatsoever removing the subsidy. It is necessary. We cannot spend our future generations' investment upfront.
But do you think it should have been phased, done in bits?
It is part of the fear that is unnecessary. Phased, no matter how you cut it or you slice it in segments, you still have to meet the bills. So, cut your coat. Stipulate to your size. It's what we must manage. Management is the issue. And we have no choice but to pull the handbrake. Otherwise, we are headed for slippery slopes.
Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu. Talking security now, no fewer than 1,743 terrorism suspects have been prosecuted by the federal government in the last 7 years. The Director of Public Prosecution at the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation, Mohammed Abubakar, gave the update at a news conference by the National Center for Counter-terrorism in Abuja. According to the Director, the federal government has also secured several convictions, including death sentences for some of the convicts. Meanwhile, Justice Emeka Nwite of the Federal High Court Abuja has ordered the remand of 4 suspected terrorists linked to notorious bandit kingpin Bello Turji in Kuje Correctional Center. In a short ruling, Justice Nwite made the order after the defendants pleaded not guilty to the 11-count charge bordering on terrorism. Justice Nwite consequently adjourned the matter until February the 10th for trial. The 4 suspects, Musa Kamarawa, Abubakar Hashimu, Samuel Chinedu, and Lucky Chukuma, denied their involvement in the offenses with which they were charged when the 11 counts were read to them. Channels Television had earlier reported that although 8 defendants were listed in the charge, 3 of them, including Bello Turji, were at large. Now, the federal government, through the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation, had filed the 11-count charge against the 8 defendants, 4 of whom are at large. Now, the suspects were alleged to have provided material services to terrorist groups by procuring and supplying illicit drugs, cannabis plants, that is, food items, military camouflage, and police uniforms. It's less than 48 hours to Christmas and about a week to the end of the current year. As Nigerians join the rest of the world to count down to these celebrations, it's unclear how many Nigerians can actually claim to be celebrating. But this is because the year has been characterized with a lot of anxiety on the part of the people as far as standard of living is concerned. Tonight, we kick off our review of the year 2024 and the economy, which appears to be the one that has affected most Nigerians, takes the first shot. And from the fiscal to the monetary policies, economists and businesses count the gains and shocks of the President Bola Tinubu administration's economic reforms. Our business editor, John McQuarrie, captures the highlights in this report.
The year 2024 started with both the government and the governed in Nigeria seeking ways to recover from the shocks of the economic reforms introduced by President Bola Tinubu in 2023, majorly the removal of petrol subsidy and the convergence of foreign exchange rates.
The effect has been captured in the headline inflation number of 29.90% and food inflation of 35.41%, exhibited in high cost of living and doing business.
The government response to the social costs of the reforms has not been adequate. So what one would have expected to see was a more systemic approach, a more policy-driven approach, an approach that will bring down the cost of production, the cost of delivery of services, so that at the end of the day, the citizens will have access to much cheaper goods and services.
To curb food inflation, the federal government started a temporary zero-duty levy on selected food imports, which ends in December 2024. There's also the value-added tax exemption on select food items, providing essential inputs such as seeds and fertilizers to small-scale farmers through programs like the Nigerian Agricultural Growth Scheme. And there's also the donation of 20 trucks of rice to each state, among others. Another intervention of the government was the introduction of programs to accelerate availability and adoption of the compressed natural gas, one of them being the presidential CNG initiative.
The emphasis is on mass transit. The emphasis is on intervening on the side of workers so that they have cheaper transport that helps them cope with the increased price level generally.
The rail sector, however, continued to struggle with shocks around logistics and energy costs, made worse by the constant collapse of the national grid, although most players in the sector had long settled to seeking alternative to the national grid.
40 to 50% of our cost is power. Let us bring it down. That would be the greatest impact they can do instantaneously, because there is a lot of embedded power of gas in the industry already. If you look at the international price of gas today, is about $2 something. Now, but why are we selling it in Nigeria for $8?
The monetary side of the reform seems to be receiving some applause as the rates in the official and parallel markets converge.
We've seen movement from 1,600 to 1,900 at some point. And of course, what do you expect? It's been negatively impactful on businesses. For me, we are beginning to see the real value of the currency, in the sense that I'll say price discovery process.
So we actually have drafted a new withholding tax regulation already as we speak.
Another major for the year is the tax reform proposed by the Taiwo Oyedele-led Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform Committee.
There's a whole lot of very positive things in the tax reform, but unfortunately, there are some contentious political elements in the tax reform, particularly this issue of derivation, allocation, which is not exactly a tax reform issue.
Positive activities were also recorded in the stock market as the NGX All-Share Index opened in the 74,000 level, but is running to close at over 100,000 level, making the market one of the top 20 best performing around the world. The activities were further boosted after the Central Bank of Nigeria announced the recapitalization of banks 20 years after the last one. The climax was, however, the launch of the $500 million diaspora bond in July, which was oversubscribed by 100% to $1 billion. The country also broke a 2-year hiatus and returned to the international bond market, raising $2.2 billion in Eurobond auction in December. While economists are more optimistic about 2025, with the hope that the proposed 49.7 trillion naira budget will build on successes of 2024, some are asking that the federal and state governments also pay attention to systemic and structural reforms required to deepen economic stability. Inijon Mekwa, Channels Television News.
In part 2, after the break, we'll get more insight into the performance of the economy in the year 2024, and we'll be joined by the Registrar and Chief Executive of the Institute for Business Development, Dr. Paul Ikele. Please stay with us. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10, coming to you live from Channels Television. A reminder of our top stories. President Bola Tinubu, in his first media chat since assuming office, says he has no regrets removing fuel subsidy in spite of its attendant effect on the cost of living. As the nation continues to wage war against insurgency and other sundry crimes, the federal government says no fewer than 1,703 terrorism suspects have been prosecuted in the last 7 years. We kickstart our sectoral review of the year 2024, starting tonight with the performance of the economy. And a final draft of the U.S. House Ethics Committee's report into Matt Gaetz, obtained by U.S. media, finds evidence he paid for sex with a 17-year-old girl and used illicit drugs while in office. Let's now get some more insight into the performance of the Nigerian economy this year, and we're being joined by the Chief Executive Officer, that's the Registrar and Chief Executive Officer of the Institute of Business Development, IBD, Dr. Paul Ikele. Great to have you on the News at 10.
It's my pleasure to have you too.
All right, so let's start off. How would you rate the handling of the consequences of the Nigerian economy, that's the economic reforms for the year 2024?
All right. First, let me commiserate with the families and government for the unfortunate incident that occurred recently at Ibadan in Oyo State, Abuja FCT, and then Kija in Anambra State, major souls of the departed. Rest in peace. Yes, about the reforms, of course, government actually have been involved in implementing several reforms since 2003 to date. The reform in foreign exchange, CBN got involved in foreign exchange, and they tried to stabilize to come up with a standard market rate, eliminating the parallel market and then the official market, which has improved in foreign exchange supply and then increased foreign exchange in the market. They have equally, of course, you just mentioned the fuel subsidy. It's a part of reform where the government came up with a stabilizing price on fuel, removing the subsidy. It's a very good reform, which has actually saved about 8.6 billion from 2019 to date. Okay, then other reform like deficit narrowing rate, which incidentally by 2013 first quarter was at about 6.2%. It has been narrowed to about 4.4% of the GDP. That has helped. And of course, improvement in the foreign reserve. Again, the other aspect which the government has actually the needs, the national economic empowerment development strategy. That has actually helped in a macroeconomic environment, in structural reforms, in stabilizing government expenditure controls, and then institutional governance. Those areas have actually improved. But however, if you review completely, you see that generally, you will say it's the entire nation is seeing, but at the short run now, on a microeconomics, the effect is serious, and it is not really getting down to the micro elements in the system. Okay, the gap is there. People are really still suffering. They are not feeling it. For example, the restructuring in the electricity and power. See, with the changes ban B, some people are not having enough, especially the micro industries. They are not getting it. And in fact, there is one micro operator who decided not to use it again because he felt that he cannot afford to sustain it. Okay, so government still need to do one or two things on that. And again, you see, in reforms, government should look at the possibilities of connecting the three tiers of government to ensure that it will have a direct effect on the entire population. Okay, so those are my feelings about that. But I think the reforms are quite reasonable.
All right, so from what you've just said, I mean, for the year 2025, yes. Many have expressed optimism that the reforms, may translate into some stability. Now, do you share this view? Do you agree with this?
Of course, I do. In fact, World Bank has even, IMF has even recommended that if Nigeria sustain the reform measures, of course, it will improve the economy to about 2.4 yes, or from 2.4 to 3.6 in the next year. So I think if genuinely, if these reforms can be sustained, it will improve the economic system. Though at the short time now people are suffering it, but you see, there need to be serious, sincere, okay, because you see, politics, we are not a political dispensation. Of course, everything, people take it to be politics, but you see, things that has effect with economic well-being of a nation shouldn't really be used in politics. Because you see, if the people are happy, the government will triumph, because the essence of governance is for the people. So you see, that Reforms Act actually is good, but how do we ensure that it is properly implemented?
I would definitely leave it at that. Dr. Paul Ikelewe, thank you so much for your thoughts on the News at 10.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, let's now head to the nation's capital of Abuja, where Emanuela Ekele is standing by to give us the very latest from Abuja studios. Emanuela.
Thank you, Ayo. The Nigeria Center for Disease Control has raised alarm over the increasing rate of infections and deaths from Lassa fever in the last 4 weeks. The Director General of the agency, Dr. Jide Idris, made a disclosure during a media briefing on Lassa fever outbreak, preparedness and response efforts by the center. According to Dr. Idris, the case fatality rate has consistently remained high by over 13%.
Out of those laboratories, 9 of them were built up again to be able to test for Lassa fever. Lassa fever is characterized under viral hemorrhagic fevers. They are high consequence pathogens. And when you build laboratories for that, it's not just, you don't have the expertise in all of them. And that's why, again, we actually strategize to see how we can increase cover nationwide to empower those laboratories, especially closest to those hotspots and different regions, so that at least each zone, we have the capabilities. If a state covers Lassa fever and they don't have those laboratories that can test properly for Lassa, they just take samples and send to those laboratories nearest them. The idea now is to reduce the number of traveling, and that's why increasing the optimization processing for some of these laboratories to be also able to test for Lassa fever. Ribavirin is still effective in treating Lassa fever. Now, I'm not going to say that. Depends on how these things are brought in. We'll try to ensure that most of these that are coming are not fake. And that's again, like rightly said again, research is going on that we are heading here. There is a task force on Lassa fever vaccine development. Antimicrobial resistance is a huge problem in this country. So that's the next one we are going to start addressing.
Now, still ahead on the News at 10, Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria, IPMAN, begins sale of petrol at 935 naira per litre. That's some business news to join us again. Welcome back to the News at 10. Over to Kaduna State now, where Governor Uba Sani has commended the people of Southern Kaduna for promoting peaceful coexistence in the interest of development and the unity of the region. The governor gave the commendation at the second edition of the Southern Kaduna Cultural Festival holding in Kafanchan. The event was attended by Governor Caleb Muftuang of Plateau State and Governor Duye Diri of Bayelsa State.
December every year witnesses the annual Southern Kaduna Cultural Festival, an event to showcase the cultural heritage of the region. The festival is significant for the people, considering the many years they have suffered from insecurity fueled by banditry and ethno-religious conflicts. The 2024 colorful event is themed Preserving Heritage, Igniting Progress, and is attended by different cultural groups from the area.
The cultural groups, also from
Governor Ubasani of Kaduna State leads the dignitaries that are attending the ceremony, including Governor Caleb Mutfwang of Plateau State and Governor Doyediri of Bayelsa State. Governor Sani praises the people for embracing peace and reiterates his commitment to run an inclusive government anchored on the principles of equity, fairness, and justice.
I want to express my profound gratitude to our dear citizens of Zone 3 for embracing peace and making invaluable contribution to the growth and development of our dear state.
Governor Sani also highlights some of his administration's achievements in the area.
When I assumed office in May 2023, I made a solemn commitment to run an all-inclusive government anchored on the principle of equity, fairness, and justice. I pledge to be fair to all persons and areas irrespective of religion, tribe, or political affiliation.
Governor Mutfwang and Governor Doyediri commend the governor for tackling the insecurity in the area and ensuring inclusiveness.
All the challenges we are facing about insecurity, will continue to collaborate and make sure that these people do not have a chance to terrorize our borders, terrorize our communities. Let us build bridges rather than burning the bridges. And these bridges will continue to link and connect us from north to south, either inter or intra-regional bridges.
The people are also using the opportunity to celebrate the return of peace to the zone.
Southern Kaduna people are very hardworking, we're very industrial, very entrepreneurial, and as you can see, we represent all over the world.
We are grateful that for an event like this to take place, it means peace has been restored relatively.
Southern Kaduna consists of 9 local government areas out of the 23 in Kaduna State, with at least 57 registered ethnic nationalities, and the people are using this festival to build trust, unity, and peace among the diverse population of the region.
And that's it from the nation's capital. It's now back to Ayo for the rest of the news at 10.
Many thanks, Victoria, and apologies again for that mix-up. Now let's head to business news with Will Ibong. Will?
Thank you, Ayotunde. The Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria, IPMAN, has announced that petrol will now sell at 935 naira per litre nationwide. And this follows the reduction in the ex-depot price by NNPCL and Dangote Refinery. According to IPMAN's president, Begandi Garima, the uniform pricing plan will ensure consistent rates across the country, with logistics costs adding 36 naira per litre. IPMAN assures Nigerians that the new price of 935 naira per litre will be implemented in more outlets from today, this Monday, emphasizing that this move aligns with efforts to stabilize fuel costs and improve accessibility across the country. Now, the Imo State Governor, Hope Uzodinma, has presented an estimated budget proposal of 755 billion naira for the 2025 fiscal year to the Imo State House of Assembly. According to the governor, the budget tagged Budget of Expanded Economic Opportunities as capital expenditure pegged at 643 billion naira, representing 85.1% of the total budget, while recurrent expenditure is pegged at 112 billion naira, representing 14.9% of the total budget.
The region of Orash to Atlantic, the infrastructural need of the state cannot be overemphasized. As the cities expand to the fringes, so are demands for roads, electricity extension, water reticulation, and etc., etc. The Ministry of Works shall be empowered to deliver remedial actions on dilapidated portions of our failed roads and bridges, while new critical roads will be constructed or reconstructed. Meanwhile, the state government shall complete works on the Owerri-Umuahia Road realization in the first quarter of 2025. while the Olom Akokwa Road dualization is also expected to be completed in the third quarter of 2025. Also, the world-class control post flyover will be completed in the first quarter 2025. I've set out our priorities. My goal is to concentrate on their faithful implementation so as to achieve maximum results. At the end of the day, I want more people to be happy that we are indeed on the path of sustainable economic development through this budget of expanded economic opportunities.
And from there, we head straight to the equities market, where it's raining green at the NGX, and just a day before Christmas. John Meko has the details.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Stock Market Report. Well, it does seem like the bull run is back at the NGX in this holiday-shortened trading week. And we see that today, the market closed 0.22%, recovering from that fall that is recorded on Friday. Still around 101,000, and market cap still around 61 trillion naira. The sectors look very exciting today. Very high figures we see from the Fugas, moving the banking counter up more than 2%. So consumer goods, Dangote Sugar back, pushing that counter, as well as Honeywell Flour, International Breweries, Nigerian Breweries. So almost 2.5%. The downside, however, is with the oil and gas. Well, it's been thriving for many trading sessions, so I guess we cannot do blame that. Aradel contributed to that, Japo Gold, as well as O&O. However, the major market mover today is MTN Nigeria. Been quiet for a bit, but we see it gaining 2 naira 50 kobo today to close at 178 naira. And this has brought the ball back to the floor of the NGX.
And that's it on business. It's back to you, Ayotunde.
Many thanks, Will. Still to come on the news at 10, final draft of the U.S. House Ethics Committee's report into Matt Gaetz, obtained by U.S. media, finds evidence that he paid for sex with a 17-year-old girl and used illicit drugs while in office. Please stay with us. Welcome back. A U.S. House Ethics Committee's report into Matt Gaetz has found substantial evidence he paid for sex with a 17-year-old girl and used illicit drugs while in office. It says the former Florida congressman, who was at one point Donald Trump's nominee to lead the U.S. Justice Department, violated multiple state laws. Here's some appears with other international news and around the world in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5.
Well, I'm honored to be here with my colleagues from the House Freedom Caucus.
A final draft of the U.S. House Ethics Committee's report into Matt Gaetz, obtained by U.S. media, has found evidence he paid for sex with a 17-year-old girl and used illicit drugs while in office. It says the former Florida congressman, who was at one point Donald Trump's nominee to lead the U.S. Justice Department, violated multiple state laws. Mr. Gaetz denies wrongdoing and says the people investigating me hated me. He has filed a temporary restraining order in an effort to block the report's release, arguing he is a private citizen and it would cause irreparable harm. The US President Joe Biden has commuted the sentences of 37 out of 40 federal death row inmates, switching their penalty to life in prison without parole.
Mr. President, there's the president right there.
Here visiting a children's hospital for a Christmas story time reading, the president said he was more convinced than ever that we must stop the use of the death penalty at the federal level. The 3 excluded from the measure include the Boston Marathon bomber and the man who killed Jewish worshippers in 2018. In a statement, Mr. Biden said his measure does not include more than 2,000 people convicted to death by state authorities. The Saudi authorities are working flat out to collate everything they have on the Magdeburg market suspect, Taleb al-Abdul Mohsen. The Saudi Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Riyadh says it previously warned the German government about his extremist views. It sent 4 so-called notes verbal, 3 of them to Germany's intelligence agencies and 1 to the Foreign Ministry in Berlin. There was, the Saudis say, no response. 2 former Israeli intelligence agents have revealed how members of the Lebanese Shia militant group Hezbollah used Israeli-made walkie-talkies booby-trapped with explosives for 10 years before they were detonated in a surprise attack in September. The 2 ex-Mossad agents told US media how the service duped Hezbollah into buying thousands of rigged walkie-talkies and pagers without realizing they had been made in Israel. Dozens of people were killed and thousands injured in the attacks. Israel said it was tailored to target only Hezbollah members, but civilians were among the victims. The UN human rights chief called the attack a war crime. Drone footage shows the bridge connecting 2 states in Brazil's northern and northeastern regions, which collapsed as vehicles were crossing, killing at least 1 person and spilling sulfuric acid into the Tocantins River. Preliminary estimates indicate at least 11 people were involved in the incident, with 2 trucks, a car and a motorcycle falling into the river, which is more than 50 meters deep. Workers have narrowly escaped a ship as it rolled over on its side at a port in Istanbul. CCTV footage was shared by Turkey's Directorate General for Maritime Affairs. 10 of the 15 crew were rescued by aid personnel and 5 jumped into the water. The governor's office said the ship ANMAH rolled onto its side at around 1 a.m. on Monday because of an imbalanced loading of the cargo. Dozens of containers were submerged in the water as a result of the accident. Large chunks of snow have been seen falling from the roof of a building in Japan amid a cold wave blanketing much of the country. The Japan Meteorological Agency's website showed that at least 20 centimeters of snow fell on many parts of the country, with some areas in the north of the main island of Honshu receiving up to 200 centimeters or more. The JMA has attributed the heavy snowfall to a powerful winter pressure pattern and advised people in the northern through western regions along the Sea of Japan to exercise vigilance and caution. And this year's Christmas message from King Charles will be delivered from a former hospital chapel in a year which the King has been undergoing cancer treatment. The location for the traditional Christmas Day broadcast is the Fitzrovia Chapel in central London, which once served as the chapel of the Middlesex Hospital. It's the first time in more than a decade that the Christmas speech has been recorded from a place that isn't in a royal palace or estate, and it's understood that the King wanted a location with a healthcare connection.
And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel studios in Lagos.
Thanks, Simon, and welcome to Sports News. Africa Cup of Nations hosts Morocco, title holders Ivory Coast and Nigeria likely to be among the top seeds when the draw for the 2025 tournament is made in Rabat on January 27. Reports say the Confederation of African Football are likely to use this month's rankings, as the next rankings will only be published on April 3rd, 2025. The 24 participants will be divided into 6 4-team groups with winners and runners-up from each plus the best 4 third-place sides qualifying for the knockout phase. And Bukayo Saka will be sidelined for many weeks after suffering a hamstring injury in Arsenal's 5-1 win at Crystal Palace, with manager Mikel Arteta describing his loss as a huge blow for the club. And that's your Sports News tonight. I'm Kelly. It's back for you today.
Thank you, Kelly. And the main news again. President Bola Tinubu today had his first media chat since assuming office, where he said he has no regrets removing fuel subsidy in spite of its attendant effect on the cost of living. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Ayotunde Balogun. You have a good night.